SDK 2.2 yet? And the two guys up front are probably way ahead of everybody, the curve here, so they've probably already been playing with it, but that's fine. So a couple things with this, and the big thing is we're going to spend quite a bit of time in Visual Studio. And what two main things I want to show with this is in Server Explorer they added a new node, Windows Azure, right, which I really love. The great thing about this is now I have the ability to, once I expand this, I can mouse click and say connect to Windows Azure. So I get a seamless single sign-on integrated right into Visual Studio, so I can sign in. So if I say sk.azure at live.com, and then we log in. Right, so now I can play with, right through Visual Studio, all of my services. So I get my cloud services. It takes a few minutes to refresh. Now what I did notice is, as I was playing with this, that the Windows Azure SDK 2.2 works for both Visual Studio 2012 and Visual Studio 2013. However, I installed it on both, and I noticed that in Visual Studio 2012, I don't get all these nodes. So for example, my SQL Databases node over here, and I think my storage node, so there's a couple nodes, but especially for me, a SQL guy, my SQL Databases node was missing in Visual Studio 2012. So I actually had to go to 2013, install Visual Studio 2013 and work with that. So I don't know if that's a bug, I don't know if there's something I did wrong, but I noticed that you can install it, but there just might be some features that are missing in Visual Studio 2012 for 2.2, right? That's number one. But the other thing, tool is that I really like about 2.2 is that if I expand my databases node, and let me refresh this. I open this in Server Explorer. Come on. It should be pulling my SQL databases, right? Oh, where was that? What was it? What's that? No, so this is when I did connect. But the other thing is I can manage my subscriptions through here, which is really awesome. Is this yours? No, these are both mine. All right, so I can manage my subscriptions both here as well, which is really awesome, right? So I can go in here and say which one of my subscriptions, and I can actually sign out of one of these subscriptions or sign into another subscription, so it manages all my subscriptions through here. I can also through here say filter my services, and this is where I can say from subscriptions, right? Which regions do I want to include? So this gives me, what I like about this, much more granularity through here than I get out of the portal, right? So I can say I only want to see that subscription and then the services in these data centers, for example, okay, which is really nice, okay. But what I wanted to show you was I don't know why it's not going here, but it should list my databases, so there might be something going on here. But if I were trying to connect to a SQL database, and in this example, if I were trying to connect to a SQL database, if there was not a firewall rule enabled for me to connect, it would actually pop up a dialog and allow me to enter a firewall rule to connect right through here. So I don't have to go. The great thing about this is I don't have to keep popping back and forth between this and the portal. I can do everything I need to do most everything I need to do right through here, including adding a firewall rule, connecting, and I can work with SQL database, like what are these? Right, so I can actually enable, so I can connect using, so through here I can connect to, I can actually shut down. So a lot of the features and capabilities they find in the portal I can do right through Visual Studio. Like I connect to a virtual machine through using remote desktop, or I can shut it down, or I can restart it, right? I can actually RDP into these. My storage accounts, I only have development on here. I should have a couple more actually, so it's refreshing. So there's I actually have a few more here. Like some websites, so a lot of things. What I like is, again, I don't have to keep jumping back and forth between my portal and Visual Studio. I can do everything here. So there's all my storage accounts. Let's go into one, right? Blobs. So again, I can get very granular. So and notice that when I started this, it had to start the emulator to be able to start working with this. So it started it for me, which is really nice. I'm kind of bummed I can't get my databases going, so I don't know why is that. But what should happen is that it should kick out here and say, let me connect to these databases, and let me add a firewall rule to connect to these databases. Okay. Let's try to do this. Yeah, I don't know why it's not happening. Let me just try this. Whoop. What's that? So it should actually open a firewall rule for me. So when you do this, if you do connect to Windows Azure, well, yours isn't in there. Is that yours? Yeah, but I have one as well. Oh, that's true. Let's try that. Yeah, there's something else going wrong. Let's try this one more time. Let's open in SQL Server Object Explorer. So it should go out and find my databases and list my databases. And it should, if I right mouse click on a database, so that should actually open in SQL Server Management too. Something fishy's going on. Anyway, you get the idea. Is that you should be able to go out and you should be able to go out and add a firewall rule to your databases and start working with databases just like you can everything else. All right. The other thing is in 2.2 is the ability to say remote debugging. So, for example, if I create, let's go create a new project. So I'm going to create a new project. I think I have that cloud, but we don't want Visual Basic. Heaven forbid. Please don't tell me I have to install. All right, so I'm going to do just a worker role. I'm going to click OK here. And I'm not going to walk through. I'm not going to do. I'm not going to push this to the cloud, but you get the idea. Once it's done, I could put, like, for example, a breakpoint. Let's say here. So the great thing about this is if I write my worker role or web role, it doesn't matter what it is. If I write my cloud service and I deploy that cloud service to the cloud, if I want to debug that real time, what I can do is I can run this locally, put a breakpoint here, and when I run this, it'll take a breakpoint and I can start debugging. But there's a couple things I have to do here to do this. So I got to do a couple things. So I need to go into where's publish? Publish. There's a couple things I have to do. So I can pick my subscription, but in next. In settings, I got to do a couple things. So my configuration here needs to be debug, number one, right? So I cannot publish this as release. And then advanced settings, I have to click enable remote debugger for all roles, right? Then deploy this to the cloud, and then I have then I can go in and start debugging. Those are the two important things, right? I have to set the deployment publish status to debug, check this enable remote debugger for all roles, and then what I can do is start checking through or start debugging is the actual service that's running in the cloud. Okay, so that's someone close that. That's number two. There's a couple other things, though. There's edit and continue for cloud services as well. So what that allows you enable to do along with this is that as you're debugging, before, if you wanted to make a change to your cloud service, you had to go and say stop the running, make the change, then redeploy and republish, right, or recompile. Here it's you can actually be debugging, make a change while your code is running, while you're stepping through, and that code will take effect, right? So you don't have to stop and recompile. You can actually keep going. Okay. There's a couple other things like, let's see, publishing cloud services. So when you publish a cloud service, you had to publish it to a specific region, right? Now you can publish to an affinity group. So if you have an affinity group set up, you can publish to that affinity group, not to a specific region. Okay, and that's kind of nice. If you've got several services, a bunch of services tied to affinity group, you can say publish this to an affinity group. Does that make sense? Okay. Those are the big things. Any questions about those so far? It's kind of a quick intro. Yeah. The entire thing. I just put it here for whatever. That's a good question. So I have not heard anything about any limitation, but I can find out. That's a good question. Yeah, it runs the. Yeah, but I and yeah. Woo! Yeah. So I haven't seen any documentation about what you can and cannot, but I think that makes sense. But I'll get a definite answer because if it's starting up, there's probably not a process that you can attach to yet, right? So you have to actually go and attach a process, and when it's starting up, I don't know if you can attach to that while it's starting up. But I will definitely find out. Okay. So that's number one. Any questions? Any other questions about that? Pretty simple, right? I like the ability where you can just start playing in Visual Studio and have a lot more control. You don't have to jump back to the portal, add a firewall rule. You can RDP. You don't have to go back to the portal to RDP into a box. You can do everything right through Visual Studio, and that's nice. Okay, so that's kind of cool. I like those, but what's even better is the next topic we're going to talk about, which is the Windows Azure Management Client Libraries. Okay, I don't know if you guys have heard about these. These are not released. There's no time frame. There's probably in the very, very, very near future these will be released. But I cannot give you a date because I've been sworn to somewhat secrecy and threatened them with my life if I give even a remote date. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I have been given approval to show you. So, how many of you guys use the Windows Azure Management REST APIs to do a lot of management? Just one guy? Is it because you don't like writing REST calls? Is that what it is? Huh? What's that? Well, there's some libraries, right? But like there's the the Windows Azure Windows Azure SDK, right? But if you want to do things like, from the Windows Azure Management API, everything's in a REST. If you want to get a list of services, you got to make a REST call. If you want to get a list of your SQL databases, you got to make a REST call, right? Which means you're making an HTTP request and all these great things, right? So what they've done, let me fire these. You know what? This is going to suck because they're on this box. I didn't think of that. Yeah, I can do that. Okay. Can you switch it? All right. 2 seconds. 1, 2. Yeah, bear with us. Because I was planning. Okay. Hold on a minute. Uno momento, por favor. Por favor.
Since we're doing this live, it's on.
No. What you need, do you guys have the Jeopardy theme song, Jeopardy show here?
We had that in the 90s.
Yeah, if you were smart, if you were smart like.
It wasn't called Jeopardy. It was called
Oh, do I have to join under a? No. Please wait. Oh. All right, everybody move over here. Thanks for installing Google Voice and video calls.
You can open the Hangout in that PC, so it's... Can you join or not?
Okay, I'm joining right now. Oh, son of a gun.
You may have to join.
I'm joining right now, yeah. The other thing I can do is I can actually, if I need, just copy them over to this box and they're not. This party is over. This message I got. Yeah, this party is over. Hold on a minute.
I hope not. I still see those.
This party is over. Hold on a minute. Sorry, hold on a minute. Just a minute. Right. You know, I may have opened the. Try this. I may have opened the old one. God, no. It's not. They're not in GitHub. Well, what I'm going to do is just. I think what I'm going to do is. I'm going to copy them. I think I'm just going to copy them over. So I got a project here. Got 2 projects. I'm just going to copy them over. Woo! You may not be able to get them to run, but at least. You know what? Sorry, I can't do this because I was threatened with my life if I distribute them, so I cannot put them on that stick. I'd have to. I mean, I can. I'd have to delete them.
No, it's okay. I don't delete every file on there.
No. Just the directory. I just want to make sure that.
You wish.
That's funny. Could you just kill him and get it over with?
He just doesn't want to take that blame.
How many of you are going on Saturday?
5 of us, 6.
Who's going to the MVP summit next week? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4 here. All right. Okay, hold on. Almost there. It's still copying here. Why aren't they showing up here? What's going on? Oh, yeah. All right, so, and one of the other things we're going to talk about is, because it may not, I'm just going to bring it up just because I think it's important to bring up, especially in light of some of the discussions we've had. So we're going to, how do I say this? One of the things we're going to talk about tonight, so anybody using SQL Federation here? So maybe we don't need to talk about it. Well, so it's going to be important, especially if some of these, like some of the projects you're going to be working on. So it's no big secret that SQL Federation, there's no work has been done on SQL Federation for quite some time, and more than likely it's not going to, right? There's still TBD on what they're going to do, and we're actually going to talk about this in a little later. There's some question as to what they're going to do with SQL Federation, right? And the reason being is because if you looked at some of the things that some of the clients, if you looked at it and looked at some of the clients that were, holy cow, where's my, yeah, if it would fit in there. There it goes. Okay. Let's do, yeah, we'll copy it there. Dun, 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 dun. I always thought that whenever there's a progress bar like that, it should play the Lone Ranger theme song. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so let's. I'll come back to the Federation topic. Let's open up some Visual Studio. And we're going to open it up for them. All right. So what we did is, you guys all know Brady Gaster, the great Gatsby. So what they did and what they've been working on for quite some time is the ability to say, instead of writing REST calls, let's make it much easier to write and work with the Windows Azure Management API. And so they said, we're going to put a wrapper around that. And so they've created this client library, this management library. This is not released. It's still in preview, right? And it'll include things like the Windows Azure management piece is pretty far along, but they're still working on some of the Windows Azure SQL management stuff, right? But I've got 2 demos here. Hopefully we can get these to run. If not, we'll show you the code. But what this does is, instead of writing this hideously long method that's a HTTP request and put and all this to do it, and talk XML and all that kind of thing, 25, 30, 40, 50 lines of code, we can now do things in about 3 lines of code, right? So let's see if we can get this to compile. Woo, all right, maybe this will work. Okay. Yeah, this should work because I think it's bringing everything over. Oh, you know what? I need my publish settings file too. Son of a motherless goat. All right, hold on. We're getting there. Where is my? I think that's indeed. This will be faster to copy over. That one, that's what we want. All right, almost there. Almost there. All right, now we can run these things. What's that? Well, yeah. Now all we have to do is let's run this again. Publish settings file. Yep. So now, what it allows me to do is, hopefully, if I click on this, it should go out and get everything. But notice 2 things, right? It went out, and there's a couple things it did here, and you can see the code. Okay. But it also shows you the XML and the HTTP request it made, the things that you had to write earlier, and all the things and everything that was sent over, right? But it's a very simple UI, so I can actually go out now, and if I want to go create a VM, things like that. But it's very simple. But what it does is it prints out here. It says, here's what we sent, and here's the code you had to send over previously right? And here's the header and everything we had to send over, right? But if we look at the code for this, so what this did is it said, give me a list based on that publish settings file. Give me a list of all my subscriptions. When I clicked on the subscription, it went out and said, give me all the regions, give me all the, this is just an example, right, what you can do with this. Give me all the virtual machine images that are in our Windows Azure gallery, but then give me a list of all my storage accounts, okay? Now, to write this kind of code was probably, you know, for all these three is probably 150, 200 lines of code, okay? But let's go out and take a look at what this really looked like behind the scenes, okay? So instead of, you know, 150, 200, 300 lines of code, it says, we say, like where is get storage accounts, right? So get storage accounts. This went out and got all my storage accounts, so a certificate, and there was the one call to get my storage accounts. That's it. Didn't have to parse any XML, didn't have to make an HTTP request, and that's all it did. So everything has to have a certificate, but 2 lines of code, 3 lines of code to get my list of storage accounts, select all my storage accounts, and then bind that to that list box. That's it. Right? Isn't that much better than writing all that REST API, all that REST code? He's like, no, I'd rather write. Huh? You like this? You like this better? Much better, right? Let's look at the code to create a VM. Right? Let's go back down here a little bit. Looking for the one that says like get virtual machine images. Let's go there. Right, so there's the great virtual machine images, right? So same thing, one call to list of virtual machine images, and then bind it to the, right? So same thing. So instead of writing all these lines of code, right? I can, and here for, you know, if I wanted to create well, actually, there's the published settings file, right? And all I was doing is saying get my list of subscriptions. Bam, there it is, right? So that's pretty easy, right? So it's just listing my list of subscriptions. But if you look at, and the reason the create virtual machine is pretty fairly large is because it's saying it's attaching disks to that. It's going and saying get my image, things like that. But everything is wrapped through this compute management client. I mean, everything is in that class. This is where everything happens. All right, if we look at the references, right? This is what it is. It's the Azure management components, right? So basically, it's a client, it's a management library. It's a wrapper around the REST API calls. So the other one I want to open is this one. So let's open the SQL Azure one. So Brady had already written, because I don't have access to the bits yet. I do have them, but I didn't have any time to throw anything together. He had already written this one, and so he goes, "Hey, show him this." And I said, "Well, do you have a?" And this was yesterday morning, or actually last night. He goes, "Do you have?" I asked him for, "Do you have a SQL database one?" And he goes, "Yeah, let me throw it together." So it took him. He goes. He asked, "How many hours do I have to write this?" I said, "You got all day," because I said it's 8 a.m. your time. You got till you leave, so you have about 9 hours to write this. 10 minutes later, he sent me this project. Right? It took him 10 minutes to write this code. Right? That's how easy it is to use this management API. It took him 10 minutes to write all of this. Okay? Let's compile this to make sure we're good. So open the same published settings file. So there's my servers. If I click on a server, there's my databases. I should have another one out there. Where's a better server? Anything on that one? Oh, I have a bunch on that one. Right, and so it took him, there's the dialog, okay, and really what he did is he basically took these methods from his other project. It took him 10 minutes to write these, right? Get SQL servers and get SQL databases. So from start to finish, create the project to sending it to me, 10 minutes. Okay? It would probably take him an hour to do this in a REST API. Okay? So this is what you can expect in probably just a few months, is a new set of client libraries that are a wrapper around the REST calls to be able to do much granular programmability with the management things. Things like, I don't know if you'll be able to do billing, but managing spinning up VMs, tearing down VMs, restarting VMs, right? Things you can do through PowerShell, creating servers, doing firewall rules, things like that you'll be able to do within just a few lines of code through these client libraries. To me, this is exciting because, you know, you guys are all developers, right? If you want to do some of these things, instead of writing REST API calls, you're doing this, right? How's this sound? Much better? Yeah, so this is an applause right there. Woo! Right. Yeah, that's right. We're now going to do a, what is it called? Fall backwards. Trust your coworker skill exercise. Okay. All right. So this is awesome. Okay. Next. Okay. What's that? Oh, okay. Yeah. He's already blogged about these. Yeah. Okay. A couple things now from the SQL database side. I think this is my subscription. Yeah, those are mine. Where'd all my databases go? Oh. Okay, so one of the things so I think in the next probably 3 to 9 months, you're going to see a bunch of things coming out that just take Windows Azure and all the data services to the next level, right? Things like these management APIs, things like, so what we're going to talk about now is the SQL Database Premium stuff, okay? And this is probably going to take a few minutes because there's several parts to the Premium, and I don't know if you guys have anybody signed up for the Premium offer yet in preview? You guys know what it includes? What does the Premium include? And those that MVPs can't answer. What is the if no one else answers, you can answer. What does the premium SQL Database Premium stuff include? What is the #1 complaint in SQL Database? Well, let's see. Don't answer that. Because what's the number? There's probably 2 or 3 actually. No, not that many. So I think the #1 complaint. I think the #1 complaint about SQL database is performance. Right? Agree? Disagree? Right? Things like my query ran great today or yesterday, but it's running poor tomorrow. Or sorry, not tomorrow. I'm projected it runs poor tomorrow. That sounded so bad. It ran great yesterday, but it's not running so great today scenario. So one of the things that they did, and so there's multiple steps. So they're introducing the SQL Database Premium offering, right? And the #1 thing around that is multiple steps. Is the ability to say, I want to configure for Premium, and so just like you can in I got to go to the server dashboard and request quota. But what you can do in the Premium is just like you can in a Windows Azure Virtual Machine or a website is say, give me dedicated resources. So in the Premium, there's 3 offerings, right? And you'll see these come out over the next 3 to 6 months. Part 1 of this is the ability to scale. So just like you can in the other offerings, say, give me a dedicated resources, give me a medium size or extra large size or a large size, where it says, give me dedicated CPU and memory. Right, and that's as simple as going in here and saying Premium, and then give me a size, and I'm all ready to go. And so give me it's called basically resource reservation. So give me reserved capacity. Right, that's #1, and that is in preview, and you can actually sign up for that today. Right, and this was just announced probably a month ago, 6 weeks ago. Is give me dedicated resources, which means now is that I can say I can get pretty close to guaranteed performance over the lifetime of my database. So if a query runs great yesterday, it's going to run just as good today. However, that does not stop you from tuning your queries. Okay, #1, you still need to tune your queries to get right, because you can still do, just because you have Premium does not mean that you cannot get throttled. Okay, so did you know you could actually save money by tuning your queries in SQL Database? Yes, you can, right? So just because you're going into premium does not mean that you're not going to get throttled. Okay, if your query is still pulling back too much data, still taking too many resources, even though those resources are yours, you may still get throttled. So still go out and tune your queries. But now you get a much better chance to say, my query is going to run the same over time. So step one is this ability to set my guaranteed resources, my resource reservation. Give me X amount of memory, X amount of RAM. Right, but you are going to, when it comes out of preview, you will pay for this, and I think pricing is still TBD. Number two is the ability to say, I want point-in-time restore. Okay, how many of you guys wanted that? Right, point-in-time restore says that since the dawn of time, or the dawn of SQL Database of Azure, we have always kept the logs. The transaction logs. We've just never made them available to you, right? What we're going to start doing now, or not now, when point-in-time restore comes out in preview, is the ability to give you within a 2-week window to do a point-in-time to the second within 2 weeks and restore from that point of time. Okay. Now that does not, however, that does not prevent you from doing your typical DBA responsibility of doing backing up, right? And this is the other thing that we just announced not too long ago, was the ability, because you've always said, oh, I can't back up like I can on-prem, right? And all this hyperventilation and panicking because I can't back up, right? So we've done this a little bit. We've taken it further. We're going to now do an automatic backup, right? And it is a transactionally consistent backup. However, it is not a .back like we know in SQL Server. Basically what it does is it backs up to a backpack, like the data application stuff, to a backpack to Azure Storage, right? And it stores it for and so you can schedule this. What storage account am I going to? How often do I back up? Schedule it and retain it for X amount of days. After that, it'll get rid of that backup, right? So, so it'll basically say back up this database from the server to blob storage. It is transactionally consistent, which means what? What does transactionally consistent mean here? Not in terms of it's transaction. So don't give me the hey, it's transactionally consistent answer. Since it's transactionally consistent, what does that mean? What happens when you do a transaction consistent backup? What's the process? Come on. You guys can answer if you want to. Huh? So the answer is that to get a transaction consistent backup, it does the equivalent of create database as copy of. So if I were open SQL Server Management Studio, the only way to get a transaction consistent backup is to open up SQL Server Management Studio and say create database, new database name, as copy of source database name. Which means for a brief moment in time, I'm going to have a new database, which means I'm paying for that database as long as it exists. Okay? So here, same thing. What it's essentially doing is the same thing behind the scenes. Create database as copy of, which means for a brief moment of time, it's going to create a copy and then create the backup off that copy and then delete the copy database. So you're going to pay for that database creation. Okay? That's what I mean by what does transaction consistent mean, is you will pay for that backup. Okay? Now, so it all depends on how, so you're not paying for transaction charges, you're not paying for data movement, right? You're just going to pay for that size of that database for as long as it exists. However, that does not mean that that's different than this. This is give me scale. This is give me dedicated resources. Or no, actually, I went to point in time. So the point in time restore says I'm still doing my backup, but someone did at some point I can go back to a point in time within a 2-week window to a second and do a restore. Okay, that is part 2 of Database Premium. You're going to see. Okay, this is part 1, right? which is awesome. Part 2 is the point-in-time restore. Anybody know what part 3 is? I'll give you a hint. What does georeplication do? But what it does is basically says when I create, in this case, and this is why you get that high availability in virtual machines as well, is that it basically takes, everything's in triplicate, right? In fact, the joke is that, since, I asked one time, I said, how many guys are really managed in a Windows Azure data center, right? How many employees are in a Windows Azure data center? 12? I don't know. I said 1, and the guy goes, well, it's because it's in triplicate. That means 3, so we hire a bunch of triplets in every data center. Not true, but what this means is that when you create a storage account and then in premium in a SQL database account, your primary and one of your secondaries will go in the data center you specify, but in this case as well, the other secondary copy goes in the next nearest data center. In the same region, right? So for you guys, if you did it in North Europe, it'd go into West Europe, right? This stuff is on by default if you didn't know that. So when you create a storage account and in SQL Database, more than likely, you'll have to turn that off because there's charges associated with this, because there's replication going on between these copies, or I should say synchronization going on, right? So premium means I've got I've got the resource reservation, dedicated resources, I've got the point-in-time restore, and the georeplication, right? These are coming, the other 2 are coming, but this is important because this now says, from a database side, this says I can now scale, so I can get dedicated resources. And this has kind of been probably one of the top 3 or 4 complaints of SQL Database for a long time is I want my queries to perform, right? The other one is getting my database into 150 gigs, and that's what we're going to talk about actually next. Lastly, what I'm going to do here from the SQL Database side. So 2 more points. Let me fire up Management Studio. Management Studio. From a backup perspective, what are you laughing at? Huh? Did I said? I did initially said Management Studio. Do I have that here? What's that? Yeah, you heard me very well. It's just okay. Nope, not that. Nope. Nope, that one. Oh, really? Oh, son of a gun. Oh, what's happened? So with 0 lines of code, you can back up your database. So I thought I fixed that because that was the issue. That one was the problem. Unless I renamed it. Let's try that one. There it is. So apparently I did fix it. So I named the copy. And all right. So in SQL 14. And actually in SQL Server 2012, CPT2 CU2, right? But it's not. You have to actually go find it on MSDN. You got to go download it.
It gets longer every second.
Every second, right? So you can now say back up your database right to blob storage from SQL Server, right? You could do. Even in 2012, you could right mouse click and say tasks, export database to export data to application, which allowed you to push that to blob storage, right, or to a backpack and blob storage, or to on-prem. This is the ability to do this right through T-SQL code, right? Just It does require a credential, right? So create credential, but that credential is really your Azure Storage account credentials, right? And then back up to blob storage using those credentials, and you're all said and done, right? So that's awesome. So if you have 2012 SP2, CU2, or SQL, actually what you could do is download SQL Server 2014 CTP2 just right now and have the same functionality. This to me is pretty awesome as well. All right, so with that, let me also talk about, well, I'm copying over one other thing. We want to talk about SQL Federation since we're talking about database stuff here. Okay. And then we've got a few more things we'll talk about. Okay, so we'll probably talk about another half hour, 45 minutes, and we'll be done. So SQL database, and while I'm talking, let me copy some over really, really fast. So, where's it at? JLA. Please do not let me forget to remove these. Hey, trust me. He says, as he runs off with the memory stick. Okay, so there's a couple things. So if you think about SQL Federation was we understand application scalability, right? If you're familiar with SQL Federation, application scalability says I know how to scale my application tier. I know how to scale my data tier, right? We're all familiar with that, right? You just spin up multiple instances of your web client, do load balancing there. Same thing with your data tier, right? SQL Federation was the concept of how do I scale my database, right? I want to be able to take that same type of logic and be able to scale my database to multiple. So basically, take my database, break that database up into multiple nodes. So basically, go from 1 to 100 databases and back down based on load and demand and workload and things like that, right? The problem with that is that while the concept was nice and it's still pretty good, it's still good because it fits certain scenarios. The problem is it didn't scale to what we wanted it to scale to because you had this root database and all the connections came into this root database because the root database said, hey, I'm looking for, you're coming in with an ID. I'm coming in with customer ID 10, for example, right? And the root database node would say, well, customer ID 10 is in this shard or in this member database over here. And the great thing about this is it would know where customer ID 10 was at any given time. If I was in the middle of a partition again, it would say, hey, now it's over here, or it's over here in this database. It always knew, okay? The problem is that the root database, everything had to come through the root database first, right? And so this became a bottleneck. So it didn't scale out to what people wanted it to scale out to. So it does fit to certain scenarios. But how did we scale to the hundreds and thousands of nodes that we wanted to scale? And that became the problem, right? So we kind of put the brakes on that, and I'm not gonna. It's TBD. So the concept now is we still need to be able to apply that same technology or the same concept of scalability. It's how we do that, and what I'll cover now is there's two main principles we're going after that we're talking about, right? Number one says, give me a fixed set of databases, right? And let me work on that. So I'm copying over a sample project, okay? This might take a few minutes, right? So it's let me. I want a static number of databases, or give me scale databases, right? That's the two principles. So there's two things that I think they're now called Azure Cat. The Azure Cat team is working on in Microsoft is give me a fixed set of databases. So I say, you know what? It basically says makes you do your homework first, and says, okay, I think I'm going to need X amount of databases, so let me scale to those databases. And so my application knows about those 50 databases, for example, and will work with those 50. But if you need to scale down or scale up, now you got to stop everything and do the adjustments and things like that. Okay. In SQL database, the other concept is I want dynamic scalability, and so one of the things we're working on now is the ability to do. And one of the shortcomings of SQL Database or SQL Federation was I could not do native to SQL Federation a fan-out query. Do you guys know what a fan-out query is? Fan-out query says I'm going to take one query and execute that on all my databases, all my shards at the same time, right? If I need to bring out, for example, give me my top 10 salespeople for the year 2012, for example. And I had to do how do you do this? Because my top 10, if I have 50 databases, my top 10 salespeople could be in any one of those 50, or spread out through any one of those 50. So it had to do a fan-out query, do a select top 10 from all 50, aggregate that data back, and then do another select top 10, right? Things like that, which made it kind of interesting. Okay, how do you do that? So so fan-out queries were not native to SQL Federation. This is taking a long time to copy. So actually, while this is copying, so let me pause that right there. So let's move on to some other stuff. Okay. All right, Mike, I might need you to let's jump into there and do your recovery services. All right. So there's a couple other things that were announced earlier this year, and it is I'm gonna go over here and pick Mike's subscription. Password.
For some reason, it doesn't stick to the
Come on. Come on.
Bear with.
There. Whew. All right. So we'll come back to database scalability in a minute. And let's close these. We don't need these. All right. Announced probably sometime earlier this summer, let's call it, was the ability to do what's called recovery services. Right? Recovery services basically says I want to back up, and it only works on, we just tried this, it doesn't work on Windows 8 or Windows 7. It only works on Windows Server 2012, Data Center, System Center, things like that, right? So what it allows you to do is basically create a backup vault in Windows Azure and back up important files from off your server right into Windows Azure and blob storage, okay? This is critical because now you can say, I've got data I need to back up. Doesn't matter what it is. Let me back that up to Windows Azure. So it's actually pretty interesting. So I'm going to walk you through creating one real quick. So do backup vault, click create, and basically give it a name. And I'm going to say, I'm not going to click OK. Belgium backup. Yeah, so I'm not going to click OK. Say West Europe and then create vault, right? Within a few minutes, you've got this backup vault. And what's really interesting is if I go into here, I get this great dashboard, and it's a multi-step process, right? So just because I have this vault, there's a couple of extra steps I need to do. The first thing you need to do is create a certificate, okay? So the best way to do this is go into Visual Studio, the Visual Studio command prop and do a make cert. The key here is that we found out is that your date the date has to be specific, so it can't be, your expiration date cannot be more than 3 years old. You must use at least 2048 bytes for encryption. Doesn't matter what encryption level, right? And it has to be a client authorized or authorized client type of certificate, right? Or a CA, right? Once you've done that, upload their certificate to the portal. Next step is to download an agent, and that agent needs to be installed on the box that you're going to back up to the cloud with, right? That's step 2, right? So you cannot use this unless you have a certificate, and because then you go into the box like Mike's done here, and we've got the agent already installed on the box. This is Mike's box, okay? So what we're going to do, let's see. So if we go to the dashboard, which is pretty interesting, it shows you what's your usage overview, how much storage you have used in gigabytes, how many servers you have the agent deployed to. Okay. So there's your servers. Mike has one server. Awesome. So thank you, Mike. Yep. And then protected items. Okay. These are the things that Mike is saying, I'm going to back up my entire C drive, for example, right? You could say, give me a folder, give me specific files, whatever, right? So notice our last backup time here was, I can't zoom in, was 5:12:48 p.m. What is it called? GMD. Yeah, Greenwich, yeah, whatever. There's a name for that. I can't remember. Drawing a blank on that one. All right, so what we're going to do, so now in the agent, what we do here is we say, all right, so there's a nice little status alert, say, hey, there's a new version of the agent, things like that. We've got a little dashboard. What happened to our last backup? We can schedule backups, things like that, right? This is pretty awesome. We can also create jobs, right? So here is the status. We've got these jobs, right? So we can either schedule a new backup, right, and say, what do we want to back up? When do we want to back that up as? Or we can say, you know what, just back up. We've got a current job, just back up now, right? So what's really interesting is if we go in here and we say, I'm going to open up the portal here. Let me check on my copy real quick. 51%. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is, so notice that it's backed up today. I'm going to go ahead and click Backup Now. Okay. And I'm just going to say Backup. Right. And so it's basically saying backup this directory. Okay. So backup. So it's taking a snapshot. It walks you through that. Notice when it's done. We've got this number will increase and the time will, the newest recovery point, this time will change, right? Preparing storage, blah, 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 blah. Inside? Waiting. So you can see the amount of the data transferred. So data transfer complete. Sweet. Job completed. Close. Now if we go in here, this should register us, but I'm going to go ahead and click F5. So now notice my recovery point is 4 and my time was 6:37 now, right? So it tracked the data I have. So now I can actually go back in and I should be able to, from a recovery point with this, actually go back and say, you know what, I need to go back to the previous what I had, right? So it keeps my recovery points. I should be able to go back and say, I need to go back to the previous version. So think of it as a very lightweight. Yeah, that's right. So, yes. Yeah. So you can hook up into your system centers and do more control of how backups are done, and then roll back. So I need to go back to previous version. So what recovery point do I need to go back to? Things like that. Okay. Any questions about that? It's fairly straightforward. And I like this is because it gives me a central because I can plug it into System Center. Now I have one point for getting more control over how I do backups and recovering, so I don't have to do disks and tapes and all that kind of stuff. I can go right to the cloud. Okay. Alrighty. Let me go back to my prescription. What's that? I just did. Yep. So I should say mine. Okay. Alrighty. This is almost done. So it's a fairly large project. I meant to do this earlier. I'm copying the internet. go into a thumb drive. How fast is your thumb drive? So I'm going to close this and just disconnect. Okay, and then I will delete that since I don't need it. Okay, that's fine. That's all right. Okay, any questions so far about anything we talked about? All right, I'm going to attempt to do a couple of mobile services demos. Okay, I am not promising any success. Okay, but I'm going to attempt to do these. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and I've got notes, so I'm going to have to refer to notes, so hopefully that's okay. So I'm going to create a new mobile service. I'm going to call this Belgium AZUG. Let's create a free 20 gigabyte database or megabyte database in the West US. That's fine. Database setting, yep, we'll put that in West US as well. Oh, you know what? Hold on a minute. I think I'm using this, and then we'll go to servers. Reset admin password. I just want to make sure my password's right. Oh, you know what? I don't know. I don't have the ability to do these. All right. Hold on a minute. I may not have the ability to do these. All right, give me 2 minutes here. Is all of this making sense? Any questions you got so far? Is there anything else you want to see before we get to some of the other stuff? Websites, database, storage, anything else? Is what you're seeing, is that, I mean, is that, you like it, not like it, don't care? SQL Azure. What was that?
That's a diamond HR,
SQL Azure. We still call it SQL Azure because SQL, yeah. Besides SQL Azure, what's the mode? Okay. Oh, you know what? That's another thing on here. Okay. So you guys know that Hadoop, our HDInsight stuff, just released. Okay. We don't. I was gonna have a demo. We didn't get the stuff set up, but you know that's well. This is copying. You know how easy it is to set up HDInsight. Is anybody any big data people here? Any interested in big data? You guys just who's afraid to raise their hand here? I'm just kidding. What's that? Oh yeah, yeah, you do. Well, you can still have little data. All right, so HDInsight's actually pretty nice. So and what I found out, I'm validating this. If I do, for example, if I go to a virtual machine and I look at a virtual machine dashboard, it tells me I've got, here's how many cores I have, right? And I've used X amount of cores. Yeah, it says 40. Yeah, I'll lend you some for, no, right? So, and the reason I did this is because I thought, and I'm just gonna, just FYI, the reason I did this is because I think we only get like 10, but then I upped it to, I said I need 20 because I've got all these other services, and then a couple weeks ago I said, you know what, I also cover HDInsight now. So I said, I need more. I need to spin up a cluster. I need more cores. So I went to them and I said, I want a total of 40 cores. And they went, Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if Mark's paying for it, but no, it's a DPE account. So it's the same thing as a It's an internal thing, but I think DPE pays for. So like all the champs, all the champs accounts go through Mark, right? I don't think this one goes. It's as similar to a champs, but I think our group pays. They're probably paying Mark back for if that's how it works. But I know that I have to report back to here's how many things I have and am I getting a bill and things like that, right? So I think we're paying somebody for all this stuff. So anyway, I went back and said I need 40 cores, okay? And the reason I bring this up, this is important, is because I said I want to spin up an HDInsight cluster, right? And HDInsight, as you know, is Hadoop on Windows Azure, right? And the Hadoop is a Hortonworks Hadoop. Okay, it was written by Hortonworks specifically for Windows for Azure. Okay, so then I went and said, okay, I've got my 40 cores. I'm going to go into HDInsight and spin up a cluster. So I spun up a cluster. And this is pretty interesting as well because we also know that there is and I'm not going to copy that project over, but we actually have a set of client libraries and PowerShell scripts. You can do this as well. You don't have to go into the portal. I've got a sample code that you can actually, in just a few lines of code, spin up a HDInsight cluster. Right? We also have .NET SDK to work with to spin up, tear down, increase, decrease your HDInsight cluster, which I find it interesting because if you look at this. 14% of 170 HDInsight cores. So it didn't take away from my 40 cores, which I found interesting. So I think, and this is what I'm trying to find out, is I think that this is a whole different set of services, right? Like what they call a Windows Azure cluster in the data center that don't apply to, now that may, and this is GA, I mean, HDInsight GA'd. So I've got 14% of 170 HDInsight cores, right? And this is, so what I did is, if you notice this, when you can spin it up, you've got, I'll show you this. So HDInsight custom create, I can do things, oh, you know what, let me do it the other way, so you can see this. HDInsight quick create. I can do 4, 8, 16, or 32 data nodes. Every node uses 4 cores, right? So if I did, and so when I created my cluster, this is important to know if you're going to create an HDInsight cluster. Every node is 4 cores. I created a 4-node cluster, right? So that should be, according to everybody's math, right, 16 cores, right? However, if you go into HDInsight cluster, it says I have 24 cores used. Why? Why do I have 24 cores used? And I think it's on here somewhere. What's that? So, yep. So you have. So I've got 4-node count data node, right? And it should be on here somewhere. I can't remember where it says it. Where does it say it? But, huh? Did it say in the info? Oh, yeah. So each head node, so you basically get your 4 data nodes and a head node, right? And that head node is 8 cores. So each head node consumes 8 cores, and you don't have the ability to say otherwise. So if you create 4 data nodes, it gives you a head node, and that head node is automatically 8 cores. You can't say, don't give me the head node. It assigns it, so you get a head node and those data nodes. So if you created 2 data nodes, that's 16 cores right there, right? So you don't have any choice. You don't have any choice of that. But I found the reason I bring this up is I find it interesting that these do not apply, and I bring this up, and I'll find out why. But these don't take away from your standard cores. And I'm telling you what, I'm not giving those 20 extra cores back. Those are I'm keeping those suckers, all right? So they don't know. That's right. If you go on cores, I'll lend you my cores, but I'm not giving them back, right? Okay. But that's what I like. So HDInsight is the ability to say, So now I can hook HDInsight up to my Azure storage. And if you've played with HDInsight before, what's missing from here, from this screen? Anybody spin up an HDInsight cluster earlier? Okay, right? And I did, and I have my MSDN account and I have my Microsoft account, and I spun up an HDInsight cluster on my MSDN account and I left it running for a day. What happened? Thank you, but your account has been disabled until the next billing cycle. Son of a gun. All right, but at that time, what's missing from this page? Yeah, there was the Manage button down there next to the Delete button, which basically takes you to the JavaScript management portal, so you can hook up and upload your files and do Hive and Pig queries and things like that, right? That's not there anymore, and the reason being that's not there is because they are going to redo that page. So they're going back to the drawing board to go, how do we do this a little better, right? Because that page has been around for a while, right? So what they're going to do, so at the same time though, they have this management API, right? This SDK. They're saying use that in the meantime, right? And you can use, but you can use things like, they actually said some of these third-party tools like Cloud Storage Studio and things like that will connect to here. And not from here, I don't think. Not anymore. But I think you can. I think, and I'll see if I can find that email. But I think you can through some of these third-party tools that will connect to the cluster. I think you can. But not through here. You can't anymore, right? So, but beyond in HDInsight, and the reason I'm bringing this up is this has been recently, in the last 30 days actually, is when it GA'd, is that you really can't do anything more than, just monitor and turn Hadoop services on and off. I mean, that's really it, right? But if you look, let's enable remote. All right, so we're experimenting live, people. What? Was it uppercase letter, lowercase letter, a number, and a special character? All right. Yeah, and then somebody write this down because I know I'm going to forget this. And it expires on, if I leave this blank, midnight by default. So can I say 12:31? And at most 7 days from now. Interesting. So we are playing, all right, we'll do tomorrow. Just whatever. Okay, so what is this? So does this give us the ability to remote into the head node? Let's find out. No, I gotta actually move it over here. This PC, JLA. Hopefully this is faster. Actually, it was fast. It's faster on this top than it was on that one. It probably does. All right, is this done? Okay, almost there. Got. We'll do about another 5, 10, 15 minutes. We may do one Have you done any of the new mobile services stuff? Okay, so did you do Visual Studio 2013 tooling for developer productivity, push notification wizard, things like that? Huh? Really? How long ago?
September.
Okay, yeah.
So that was.
All right, I'm going to try to do that demo. Okay? Yes?
Guarantee that the class will work, or do you have to retry?
My understanding, and I'll clarify this with Brady, is that there's retry automatically in there. Yep.
So that we use it already. Use it to
It's all who you know. Yes. I was going to email Brady and ask him. Should I not do that?
You can show whatever you get some NDA stuff in there.
Well, let's see. Is there? Let me take a quick look. Any NDA stuff in there? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes. There is. Looks like. So we're gonna. That does look like NDA, but stuff. All right. The obvious button, connect. All right. So what do you look at?
Take a look at your build steps. Server manager.
That's the point.
Thank you very much. My server's been upgraded. Huh? Oh! Yeah. I did. Yeah, I did. Run as administrator, right? So apparently there's a bug in.
Then you need to add every single.
All right, let's try this again. Hadoop name, node status.
Get all your health of your
Okay, that's good info. So it's the same thing what you're used to seeing in there? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So you can still. It was still 4.2?
Yeah, it's normal.
Well, but there was the ability to say when you create that, for example, if you say custom create.
Yeah. but that's the 1.1 HDInsight version. There's a little bit of confusion on the version.
Yep.
Because the guys who really do the admin of Unix or other platforms, they say, well, Windows out, so why is that still not? It's the HDInsight version, which is 2.1.
Right.
Not the admin version, which is still 1.1. So if you want to use all the new features of that, service backlog.
Okay. Let's do this, and then we're going to do one. We're going to attempt to do one mobile services demo. No, we're just going to open this. That's fine. It may error, but we're not going to run it. I'm just going to show you some code. Because what this does is it says, and this goes back to the SQL Federation stuff. There's two approaches I was talking about, right? There's the let's plan ahead scenario where we say we're just going to create, like, let's say 50 databases and plan that. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I think it's versioning issues. So we're going to create 50 databases and then code our application to use those 50 databases. Okay, that's one approach, because then we get the benefit around that is we get evenly distributed sharding across those 50 databases. We use those evenly. We get that. The downside to that, though, is that if we have to scale up or down, that's significant change. Right, that's one downside, but that's one approach, right? Because and the reason that's a nice approach is one of the approaches that we're recommending is because we work with our customers to say, what is your top? How many databases do you think you need? How many users are you going to have? And so we do the math to figure out, okay, based on our workload, based on the number of users, based on the number of transactions, we need X amount of databases. Great, we're going to start with that, okay, and basically add a few more just for scalability. Right, that's more of a static scenario. This scale out scenario right here is more of a, this is the dynamic scale out, right? And what it allows is the ability to say, I'm now going to take my logic, right? And this is this logic. So the workload group, a workload group, think of it as a boundary for your shards, right? A workload group contains the number of shards. A shard, in this case, shard equals database. So the number of shards or databases in my workload group and how many I can grow to, how many minimum do I have. So you can get very granular in this scenario to say, how do I grow, how do I expand and contract my databases? What it allows me to do then is basically say, take my sharding map. So a shard map basically says, how many databases do I have, what's my range partitioning, and create a shard map that sits in the application. That shard map then says, and this is what this application is, the shard map then says, I understand regardless, so I can dynamically scale up and scale down. So what happens then is through our workload group, I define my max number of shards, my min number of shards, and how those shards grow. For example, how many tenants can I have per shard? What is my max shard size? So when my database hits 50 gig, do I now do I then create another shard, another tenant, and scale that way, right? So how do I grow these things? So and the great thing about this is because my shard map now is sits not in the database, so I don't have this pigeonhole bottleneck in database. My application, all the logic now sits in the application. What we're doing is we're basically, though, abstracting this, and this is going to be a plug-in into your application, and we're extracting that from your application. So has anybody here ever had to build a sharding technology and caching library into an application? Yeah, and everybody's laughing like, no, do I want to? Absolutely not, right? And it's hard because, and why is it difficult to do that? Several reasons, but what's the main reason? Because at some point in time, your cache is going to be out of date, with your database. And so think about that, the round trips that you have got to go make to keep refreshing your cache and keep that shard map in sync, right? So with this library, what we're saying is we're going to create this library that you plug into your application. We abstract all that logic from your application to the database so that you say, and we can, since we have that logic built in to say if my database hits X amount of size, or if I reach my shard limit, grow 1 or grow 2, we handle that increment that management of the shard for you. Okay, so we don't have that bottleneck in the root database. Plus, what we're saying built into this now is the ability to say I have a fan-out query. I can do native fan-out queries right through this library. When I execute a query, if I say select star from employee where employee ID equals 10, it knows where to go. It knows which library that's in because of my shard map. The shard map knows which my range partitioning is and things like that, right? So that's a lot to explain, and there's a whole hour and a half presentation we do just on this library. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, and this is, I know this is really high level and it's probably making not a whole lot of sense yet. The reason I bring this up is because this is more of this is possibly and very likely the direction we're going to go with sharding. Many people have asked, and I think we can make it available. Not yet. So yeah, no. You want this water, you want this water. Well, and the reason being is because, exactly. Yeah, I was just going to do that. These are not this is not the library. So, and we said the reason being is because we want to get it to a point where there's some functionality we want that from the fan-out query and true scalability that we want to get in before we make this available. This will go up on CodePlex. This is coming from the Azure Cat team. Right, so myself, Azure Cat, and some of the others are working with this to test this, to do a workload on this and say, does this, right, because, like I said, this is likely how we're going to go. Every time I show this, people are like, yes, can we do this? This is going to be in the library. We'll be up on CodePlex, but we are doing heavy stress testing on this right now. Going to get it to a point where all the functionality, the basic functionality of dynamic sharding and scalability and fan-out queries work as promised, right? So we're hoping, I'm going to say, I'm not going to give you a date, but I'm going to say, let's say possibly soon, right? And soon in Microsoft terms could be, yeah, not that long. So actually, we're probably going to do a show on this. In January, a Channel 9 show, and at that point we'd like to make it available fairly soon thereafter. So I'm trying to be as specific as I can without being too vague, and it's not working. Don't watch this hand, watch this hand. Yeah, so like probably let's say first quarter next year, right? So that's as specific as I can get. Okay. Well, okay. So here's I don't want to say next week and then not have it available, right? So there's certain functionality we want to get in there. So we're just saying probably first quarter. I mean, we want to do a show on this in Channel 9 and start promoting this and start doing demos and videos on this, right? Like ASAP. So it's not going to be December. We're going to start doing stuff around the January. So I would expect, I would expect it sooner than first quarter of calendar next year. Is that soon enough? Well, that's well, yeah, but that's also includes it's a 6-month range. All right. Okay, but again, this is kind of the things we're looking for. We're talking about because it's more of a scale-out sharding dynamic, but at the application level, not SQL Federation, right? So we're kind of backing it out of the database. Now, that does not mean SQL Federation is going away. I'm not saying what's going to happen with that. I don't know what's going to happen with that because we have customers using that, and it fits it fits certain scenarios. Okay, so don't take from this. Don't take it away that it's going away. We don't know what's going to happen with it. because we have customers using it, right? And we may at some point say, hey, how do we get customers off Federation to this, right? And at that point, okay, that's right. So that's what I mean. So as vaguely accurate as I can be, right? That's what I mean. Okay, so no, we're not going to do that. Okay. So one demo of mobile services. Besides Christoph over here, any mobile services people in the crowd? Or am I doing this demo just for Christoph? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Just tell me the money. All right, so we're going to try to do this. So I'm going to create a new mobile services. I have not had time to run through this before. That's probably what I'm going to be doing in the hotel this evening. All right, so we're going to create a new Belgium mobile service. Let's create a new database. Yeah, we'll put that in West US. West US. So I think I'm going to change my Twitter handle because there's a SQL chicken, a SQL duck. So I think I'm going to change it to like SQL platypus or something like that. SQL. There you go. What? If that does not exist, I'm taking it. SQL pirate. Huh? Yeah, Mike, no, you're not. Huh? That's domain squatting, buddy. Come on. Here's $10. All right. Has it really?
Yeah, by a guy named Yum. It was nothing.
There we go. SQL Pirate's been taken?
Yeah, but I think SQL Groups or also got SQL Walls, but it's a
We are not doing that one? All right. So we're going to create a Windows Store app. So let's see. Oh, you know what? So we got create a new empty Windows Store app. Let's just do that. Okay. Let's just do a Visual Studio. I probably didn't need the Belgium Store. Oh.
I agree. Even you guys have to do that.
You would think, yes.
You're in the phone and
Yeah. Sure. Yes. There is a bright side.
There's a bright side. You need to look at it.
Really? Oh, son of a gun. Getting your, oh, there we go. Thank you very much. Expires a month from now. All right. Okay, so it says, go in here, right mouse click on project, add push notification.
There it is.
Next. Oh, there goes single sign-on. No. So far, that email account doesn't exist anymore, so I don't know. Okay. Well, it doesn't. You need to update your security info at. And I have. I don't know why it's pulling up that information. Okay, so what do you want me to do? So I apologize. This shouldn't have. I meant to go through these and have this already set up. So what I'm going to do. You guys familiar with? So at that point, Nick Harris. Nick Harris did. There's 2 demos Nick Harris did on videos on his blog and up on Channel 9 that walk through this demo and the it's a GitHub versioning new enhancements to that demo for mobile services. So in other words, I can write through. What it is instead of going through he walked me through these demos. So what it is right through Visual Studio, I can through Visual Studio push and deploy right through GitHub, right to GitHub. I don't have to go through the portal. I don't have to do anything like that. That was a couple of things that came out like a month ago. All right. So I just highly recommend you go watch these videos for the mobile services stuff. And I apologize, I meant to do this. I just ran out of time. So I'll go watch those. So at that point, we've already been talking almost 2 hours. Is there anything else you guys want to see? And was this helpful at all? I mean, I just wanted to ramble and show you stuff. And I meant to get to the mobile services, but there was things like HDInsight and some things and that I didn't quite prepare for. So, but was this helpful at all? Yeah, more or less, sorta, kinda. Yeah, no. Anything else you guys want to see? I don't know if I ever answered your question. Yeah. So okay. So you also notice, yeah. So let me, along with that, you'll notice the following. So repeat the question. Right this. So watch this. Bam. What does that say? It says SQL reporting will be discontinued on October 31st, 2014. So, and the reason I bring that up is because that's the same answer. The answer to this is the same answer to your question, right? If you need, and this is the other thing. You probably already know this, right? So one of the things they announced probably earlier probably same time, maybe early summer, is that and I think that's why they're doing this and the agent thing, is because from a virtual machine perspective, you now only pay for a virtual machine when it's running. Right? Did you guys know that? Right? So it used to be that if you created a virtual machine, even if it was stopped, you were still paying for it. Now, if you stop it, you only pay when it's in a running status. So you can stop it, and you're no longer paying. Right? So with this and with the agent, if you need to run a report or run an agent, create a VM with all your stuff on it, start it, do your things, and stop it. And only pay for the amount of time that it's running. And the new client libraries, we covered some of the new VM stuff. Tried to cover mobile services. Maybe we'll come back and do that one. What else did we cover? We covered SQL Database stuff, some of the premium offerings, right? Anything else you guys want to know about? We talked about HDInsight a little bit. What's that? Not going to go what? How many of you are interested in HDInsight and some of the Power BI tools? A few of you? What? Oh, is it really? They just announced that? Direct table storage. All right, so maybe I should have checked my email before the. Anyway, so and the reason I ask is because if you got anybody interested in the Windows Azure HDInsight stuff and the Power BI, if you haven't seen some of the Power BI demos, they're phenomenal. Huh? Power Map, right? Natural language query. You guys seen natural language query? This is the ability to say instead of select star from where inner join, you can say show me all the flights from Amsterdam to Seattle, or show me the average delay by city over, right? So you're asking a natural language in English or whatever language, and since the data is up in Hadoop and HDInsight, the driver, you can ask a natural language query, and it'll translate that, and it'll say, here's what I think you're asking, and give you the data back real time against terabytes and terabytes of data, right? It's awesome, right? And so you can ask it any type of query. And so these are kind of things that I'd love to come back and show you kind of the HDInsight and some of these natural language query things, right? Huh? Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'll actually. Oh, I am doing HDInsight in Cloud Brew.
So look from Azure.
I forgot all about that. Yes, so Cloud Brew, I'll actually be doing that. I forgot all about that. HDInsight. All right. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful. I just wanted to kind of just hear some new stuff that's out, right? I didn't want to get really specific and drive because there's some cool things. What's new, what's potentially coming in some of these things, like fairly, things like that, right? So hopefully this was helpful. I didn't want to, it was just here's kind of quick hit on a lot of things that are new. If you want a deeper dive on some of these things, like HDInsight, we'll do that in Cloud Brew. SQL Database, I think from the SQL Database perspective, I think once you start seeing some of these premium things come along, you'll start seeing more and more features being added to, because they wanted to get a focus on the stability. I really like, and I don't think I ever answered your question, because SQL Data, I'm a SQL guy. I like SQL, so I think SQL 14 is awesome, and the Hackathon stuff. Any SQL people here? Just a few of you? I think SQL 14 is what we call the cat's meow. You guys heard that phrase? I think it's just the Hackathon stuff is just how do I say this? It's just wonderful, right? It's the ability. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's the ability to basically get up to 20 to 25 times the performance on your current box by taking specific tables and stored procedures and compiling them as native code, DLLs, and running them native, just by taking specific tables and stored procedures and compiling them as native code, right? So everything's stored in memory, so all your locks and latches just drop drastically. It's wonderful. So so just by moving a table, you get 6 to 10 times performance just by moving a table. So what it basically means is we're storing that data in memory, cache, right? But then taking a native proc and compiling that native to a DLL, you get up to 25 to 30 times the performance without upgrading CPU, memory, just using the current hardware you have. It's wonderful. So there's SQL things like that. Right, so there's great things coming as far as database and SQL Server and HDInsight, right? Some great things. Any other questions? We've been yapping for 2 hours, which is fun. I don't mind. Anything, Bueller? Okay, hopefully this was helpful. I mean, I just wanted to what's new and what's coming, right? Anyway, otherwise, thank you. Appreciate that.